Hi, everyone. I'm Gold Derby News and Features Editor Ray Richmond, and I'm here today with John Leguizamo, the impossibly versatile actor, comedian, and movie producer, who is featured in three projects at the moment: the six-part MSNBC travel series Leguizamo Does America, the nine-part Amazon Prime limited series The Power, and the Showtime five-part series Waco: The Aftermath. John, welcome. Uh,
Thank you for having me. What a pleasure, Ray.
Oh, of course. It seems like, thank you. It seems like you're not having a lot of trouble finding work these days. But let's dive right in to talk about your project, starting
Sure.
with Leguizamo Does America. It seems like a show promoting Latinx culture and Latin communities, kind of masquerading as a travelogue.
Yes, yes. It was a sleight of hand that I was allowed to perpetrate on the public. Uh, you know, uh, it kind of like we took the title from Debbie Does Dallas back in the day. So
I am
she was
old
doing
enough to
something to
remember that.
people, and I'm doing something to America that very similar to what she's doing. Uh, and I wanted to like find Latin excellence across America and disguise it in a travel food show, but smuggle in content and important facts about Latin culture that's sorely missing, uh, all across because we're the largest ethnic group in America, the oldest ethnic group in America, and we've been virtually invisible for 500 years.
Yeah, what, that's so true, John. And I know you've been, something of an obviously an advocate and an activist for Latinx representation on both sides of the camera in entertainment in Hollywood. Why does it seem like Latin representation has lagged so far behind, say, African American representation, and been such a struggle for you guys?
Um, I mean, obviously, the system is broken in some ways that excluded us. Um, but luckily we got into the digital revolution now and we have data and facts, and I think that's going to make the big change. That's what's fostering all this change because we can keep track. Before, like when I first started came on the scene, I thought we had Nielsen homes, boxes in Latin homes, and they weren't. We were zero representation. So every TV show you saw from the 50s on, you weren't counting Latin households, which was the largest ethnic group in America, totally sorely missing. And obviously representation in front of the camera, except for uh, Desi Arnaz. He was the only, mogul and executive and star, and then Freddie Prince. So it's like been very far few in between. And it's not for lack of trying. It's not for lack of talent. It's just we were not accepted.
Is that true that there weren't any Latin Nielsen homes back in the day? Uh,
None. And then in the '94, when I came on on the scene with House of Buggin, we had a small number, and Afro American people also were the small numbers. We weren't equal to our population size.
that's just astonishing. Wow. I'm not easily stunned, but that's pretty stunning. But in terms of Leguizamo Does America, so I know you go into a lot of different Latin communities and
Yes.
study the culture and the cuisine and everything else, and it's just an incredibly charming show. But it's again a backdoor way into really showing the vibrancy of the community.
Yeah, yeah. I was able to. I wanted to get content. I wanted to find out what's going on in the Latin communities in Chicago, uh, Florida. We talked to Republicans, we talked to Democrats. We didn't pick one side. I wanted to hear it all. And I wanted people to be as honest as possible about what's going on, so we can get a real picture of Latin culture across America: Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Mexicans, Colombians, Central Americans, South Americans, that get everybody in there, all the Caribbean, and we did.
How much change have you seen in Latin representation over the past 20 years? I mean, because we hear a lot of that word diversity, it gets
Yeah.
tossed around Hollywood a lot, but it seems like they like saying it more than doing it.
Yeah, there was a lot of good talk about for optics sake. And I mean, before we were less than 1% of the faces in front of the camera. Forget about behind the camera. But these past few years, since COVID hit and hashtag Black Lives Matter, I think things have really changed. I think our representation is up to 6% this year, which is great in front of the camera. I mean, it should be 20% because that's our population size. Plus, we over-index in terms of our representation at the box office because we're 30% of the U.S. box office, sometimes 33% of the box office, and $4 billion in streaming. And we're a third of sports fans. So, yeah, we over-index in terms of the money we spend in entertainment, but not we don't get our money's value. But I think things are improving slowly. They need to catch up to our 20%, then I'll be happy.
Still not a lot in terms of in the boardrooms and in the executive ranks in Hollywood, though. I'm sure even less than 6%.
Oh yeah, no, we're yeah, that's and corporate wise as well. We're very underrepresented because we had $2.8 trillion to the GDP every year, where we're not represented that way in corporate and boardrooms and as executives.
Well, let's change gears here for a second,
Sure.
John. What was it about The Power, the show on Amazon Prime, that drew you? What grabbed you about the script?
Oh, I love this script. I thought it was so unique, very different. It's called speculative fiction uh, because it's very realistic. It's not so highfalutin as sci-fi. It's not so out there. Very natural, and it's all grounded in science, real science research. But obviously, it's still made up. But I thought Naomi Alderman's novel was so brilliant in talking about feminism and 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 women's problems in getting power and attaining power and males, the patriarchy blocking women from attaining their rightful place. And I just thought it was so charming and powerful and aggressive. And I thought it's a wonderful, wonderful series.
For those unfamiliar with it, The Power, it's I guess you'd say speculative fiction, kind of thriller set in a world where teenage girls develop the hereditary power to electrocute people at will, and then that spreads to older women as well. When I was the father of a teenage girl, I can tell you that it seemed like my daughter had the power to electrocute people.
They
Um,
definitely got powers that yeah, they may not be electric, but they definitely have an effect.
oh my God. I'll say so. There are there's a lot metaphorical going on even with that premise.
Yes.
But tell me about your character in the series.
Yeah, I play Rob Lopez, and I'm Tony Collette's husband. She's the mayor of Seattle, and I'm her scientist, doctor, stay-at-home dad, Mr. Mom. Uh, while she's the ambitious leader of the family, and it was a great role. Here's a chance to have a mixed race family, a Latin children, and my daughter, played by Auli'i Cravalho, uh, who was the Little Mermaid, uh, in the live action one that was on television. And she plays my teenage daughter who gets the power, who develops the organ, the skein that can give the electric charge. And some girls it's like static electricity. Some girls it's like a nuclear blast, and the powers that be become afraid of women, and they start corralling them, and then the girls escape. It's a wild metaphor for what's going on in the world in America in terms of uh, abortion rights, trans rights, uh, critical race theory. Book banning. I mean, all the crazy things that are happening in America. This even though the show is speculative fiction, you go, wait, what's happening in America seems like science fiction.
What's the reaction to the show been?
I feel like a lot of people are addicted to it. They can't. wait for the next season because it's a slow burn. You're following four teenage girls, so you're bringing four stories together, and three others minor subplots, and so it all builds together, and then the end by the end of the season you're at the tipping point of women taking over the world, and then your payoff would be the next season.
Be interesting to see what women could do if they took over the world. Men have done a pretty good job of screwing it up. So, um,
We've done a
I,
great job of that.
oh my
We're the best
God,
at
an incredible job. I would
it.
love to
Incredible
see,
job. Pat
give,
yourself on the back. Yeah.
we have, we've been, we're incredibly good at screwing things up. But speaking of, this is a
Yeah,
bad
starting
transition.
wars. Yeah, yeah, you name it.
This is a bad transition, though. You were also a regular, or maybe it's a good transition, in the Showtime limited series Waco: The Aftermath, which detailed the siege and the trials of the surviving members of the Branch Davidians. I guess we just passed 30 years. I can't
Yeah.
believe 30 years has happened since that tragedy. And you received an Emmy nomination for your work in the original Waco series on Showtime in 2018. What about this event continues to fascinate you?
Well, it because it resembles what's happening now with white supremacists and all the vile shootings, and it was a similar time back then. There were these groups, the marginalized groups that felt, they had white rage and white fragility, and they started these different groups, and the Davidians were one of them, and then the Ruby Ridge, and they all learned from each other, and then finally, um, um, what happened in Oklahoma, the blowing up of the building was Oklahoma, right? Am I bugging out?
Oklahoma City.
Yeah, Oklahoma City.
Yeah, God, I can't. That I think was about 20 years ago, or more than
Yeah, it
that.
was about 20 years ago.
20, Jesus. Um, so do you feel like something like the Branch Davidians in Waco could, I mean, in the current environment of the country, could happen again?
Well,
Like
you
it,
have the Proud Boys, you have QAnon, you have all these different factions, and the Oath Keepers. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of that similarity going on right now. These groups that feel outraged and feel marginalized, and but they're aggressive, and and they train militarily and have weapons just like they did back then. Ruby Ridge.
it's a scary time in this country, but it's one of the things that's heartening is to see that you've been able to continue to be employed pretty much almost as much as you want to be. That you've been one of the few really hugely successful members of the Latinx community, like consistently for decades. Why do you think you personally have been so welcomed and successful as an
Uh,
entertainer? If you could step outside of it and not, and not think about, well, because I'm good. I mean, which is certainly part of that. But I mean,
I
maybe
mean,
you're
talent isn't enough.
non-threatening.
Unfortunately, you would think it would be that talent would rises and talent wins out, but it's not that. I mean, I knew my since I was in college at NYU and I was in classes with DB Sweeney and Andrew McCarthy, and we're paying the same tuition. I'm in the same class. I'm getting A's. Maybe they weren't, but they had 5 auditions a day. I had one every 5 months, and mine were always for drug dealers, murderers, and janitors. So I knew I didn't have the same options. And even though I was idealistic and I believe in a meritocracy, it wasn't a meritocracy. So I knew that I had to do other things to survive. So I started writing. I wrote my own material and to represent like the way I saw Latin people and to portray Latin life the way I saw it. That was sorely missing, and I found my audience. With Mambo Mouth, when the audience found me, they would scream and holler because they were so happy to see themselves represented, and I knew that fed me, and that continued. Then I did Spicorama, and I've done 6 one-man shows since, and I've always gone back to the theater, and it will always go back.
You've been so unique though in the kinds of projects that you've done. Like you said, you're not. janitors and drug. You've never done the janitor and drug dealer thing, and you're not just the the funny guy either. I mean, you're really sort of a thinking man's entertainer, which is rare for any ethnicity, but incredibly rare for somebody of brown skin. So you've really made breakthroughs, I think, in what you've done and being able to have the kind of versatility you have.
Yeah, I was lucky. I had a lot of allies, uh, producers and directors who saw my work and saw what I could do and championed me and took big risks. They took risks in casting me, um, because uh, a lot of studios didn't want a Latin lead. They didn't want a Latin co-star. And these producers and directors believed in me, and so they would champion me, and that helped me a lot of the way. And yeah, I always wanted. I was always an artist. I always wanted to make content that mattered. I wanted to do things that changed the world because I thought art was such a powerful instrument for that, for change. So I've always tried to make my comedy have some impact. I wanted to have impact.
Was there a tipping point or a moment where you felt like, wow, I feel like I've sort of gone mainstream, almost mainstream now with my comedy and with my entertaining? That
I
if you
mean,
could,
I guess you mean like selling
career
out?
wise,
You mean like bad, like that I got. Well, maybe with Sexaholics I got a little. It was a little more commercial, a little more uh pandering to what the crowd liked. But I was also pushing the envelope on the sort of the sex content. I mean, I hadn't seen too many people do the vile things that I was doing on stage.
it's great. Truly, what I been a big admirer of yours for a long time, and
Oh, thank you.
you really have opened so many doors. Do people in the entertainers, not that you all hang out in the Latinx community, do you all like kind of have each other's back and support each other? Like George Lopez and folks like that. Is that something that you're cognizant of all supporting each other?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, we all like, you know, try to see each other's flicks, try to show up to premieres, download content, support brown business wherever we can. Yeah, yeah, it's important. That's kind of solidarity is the only way you can get ahead when you're excluded as much as we are.
But I think you're actually at the point now where you're not considered a Latin entertainer. You're just an entertainer, which I think is the real progress.
Right, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. We want to get to a place where any actor can play anything, and we're not judging people by the color of their skin or their ethnicity or any other aspect of it. It should just be the ability of the actor. But we're flawed as human beings, and we're always doing those things of creating differences and separation.
John, I think with that we're out of time. You can see John Leguizamo in Leguizamo Does America streaming on Peacock, The Power streaming on Amazon Prime, and Waco: The Aftermath on Showtime. And John, good luck this Emmy season. I hope you win your
Thank you.
second. I know
Thank you, my brother.
you won your first one in 1999, I believe it was, for Freak.
Yes, for Freak. I was
Uh,
nominated for two and I got one.
Fantastic. Well, I think you're overdue for your second. Good luck on that. And thanks a bunch for visiting with us at Gold Derby today.
Thank you, man. Much love. Big hug.